The Jedi Council was gathered in the highest chamber of the temple on Coruscant, analyzing the latest reports from the conflict zones. Intercepted messages indicated unusual movements in the Senate, secret agreements between neutral systems, and an increase in the number of worlds considering leaving the Republic. Masters such as Plo Koon, Mace Windu, and Kit Fisto exchanged serious opinions, trying to identify whether there was a concrete threat or just paranoia caused by the political climate. Yoda listened silently, observing not only the words, but also the energy that each master conveyed. Something in the air seemed heavier than usual. The meeting went on longer than usual. They discussed reinforcing patrols on trade routes, investigating movements in the unknown regions, and evaluating new training for Padawans that could prepare them for harder times. However, no concrete decision was made. At the end, one by one, the masters rose and left the room, exchanging brief greetings. Yoda remained motionless, as if he had not heard the call to end the session. Something was keeping him there. He closed his eyes and felt the force as if it were a river current passing through his hands. But this time, the current seemed to have changed direction, flowing from a specific point within the room. It was as if a distant echo was inviting him to stay. No audible voice, but a subtle and undeniable impulse. "Stay, I must," thought Yoda, allowing himself to follow this feeling which, although gentle, seemed impossible to ignore. The hall fell silent. Only the sound of the wind blowing against the windows mingled with the master's slow breathing. He walked to the center of the room, his footsteps echoing on the polished stone floor. The sensation in the force intensified, as if something was about to reveal itself. The light from the torches reflected off the walls, creating elongated shadows that moved almost as if alive. Yoda stopped, lifting his chin slightly, sensing that he was at the exact spot where he should be. It was then that a different energy began to fill the air. At first it seemed like just a reflection of the lighting, but soon it became denser, taking shape. Luminous particles began to swirl, like dust floating under intense light, but moving in an orderly fashion. Yoda did not move. He knew that something of the Force was about to manifest itself, and that any interference could break this moment. The light grew in intensity and began to mold itself into a human silhouette. At first, there were no details, only the outline. But little by little, features began to emerge. A man with a firm posture, wearing Jedi robes, with a face marked by hard experiences. His presence exuded calm, but also a deep seriousness. Yoda kept his eyes fixed, absorbing every detail that appeared before him. The walls seemed to recede, as if the reality of the room was being overlaid by another plane of existence. The glow flickered slightly, like flames struggling to stay lit. Still, the figure solidified more and more, until a pair of clear, attentive eyes met Master Yoda's gaze. There was no doubt. This was no ordinary vision. The sensation in the Force became so intense that the Master felt his own breathing slow down. He had seen Force ghosts before, but never of someone he had not known in life. The connection he felt with this presence was intriguing. There was something familiar about it, but he could not identify it. The visitor remained silent, as if waiting for the right moment to speak. The air around them was charged with an almost magical energy. The torches seemed to shine brighter, and even the wind blowing through the windows sounded like a distant whisper. Yoda said nothing, just stood firm, waiting for the stranger to reveal himself. The figure then leaned forward slightly, and the room seemed to hold its breath, as if the entire galaxy was waiting for that first word. Thus, in the silent heart of the Jedi Temple, surrounded by light and mystery, Master Yoda sensed that he was facing something that would change the fate of many. And the moment the voice began to emerge, he realized that the Force had not kept him there by chance. He was about to hear a warning that would come from far beyond his own time. The figure before Yoda took on a clearer form, revealing not only his face, but also the serenity with which he carried an immense weight. He breathed slowly and said, "My name is Luke Skywalker." The words echoed through the empty hall as if they were more than just sound. They were a milestone in the fabric of the Force. Master Yoda raised his eyebrows, fixing his gaze on the visitor. His deep, drawling voice, full of curiosity, sounded, "Skywalker, you said?" The name was not unknown to him, but he had never heard it that way, coming from someone who was not part of his time. Luke stepped forward, even in his ethereal state, as if to reinforce the seriousness of his words. "Yes, it is a name that, to you, does not yet carry much weight. But for my time, it means the fate of the galaxy." He paused, as if searching for the best way to explain. "I am not here by chance, Master Yoda. The Force sent me to you because what is about to happen will change everything, and only someone with your wisdom and experience can understand the gravity of what I am about to reveal." His voice conveyed urgency, but also respect. Yoda tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "Explain, you must." Luke took a deep breath and then revealed, "I am the son of Anakin Skywalker." The sound of the name Yoda knew so well seemed to echo in the room, heavier than before. Luke kept his gaze fixed on the master, gauging his reaction. "And I come from a time when Anakin's name is not remembered as that of a hero, but as something much worse." The master frowned, feeling the force around him react to the words. Luke continued, "There will come a time when he will be pushed to his limits, and the decisions made from there will begin what you will know as the Galactic Empire." His tone was firm but laden with sadness. "What you know today as the Republic will be but a memory. The Senate will become an instrument of oppression, and the Jedi Order will be hunted to near extinction." Yoda closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing those words. The Force showed him that this was not a lie, nor a common vision. It was a real echo of a possible future. "Only to me tell you must?" "Why?" he asked. Luke nodded. "Because what I am about to say could be too dangerous if revealed to the Council. Even among the Jedi, there are doubts and conflicts. You, Master Yoda, are the only one who can act without letting vanity or fear get in the way." Luke's ethereal presence began to waver slightly, as if being pulled away. His figure was still before Yoda, but the glow around him was fading. "I don't have much time," Luke said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Every second I spend here demands more of the Force than I can bear." The Jedi Master leaned forward, sensing that the revelation was about to reach its crucial point. The edges of Luke's body became almost transparent, and for a moment it seemed he would disappear before he could finish. He raised his voice. "What will happen is inevitable, unless you change the path. But changing that path will require decisions that no one else will have the courage to make." Yoda felt the gravity weigh on him like a rock, but he did not look away. Luke's ghost trembled in his luminous form, like a candle exposed to strong winds. The expression of urgency grew on his face. "You cannot fail, Master Yoda. If you fail, millions will suffer." And then his voice grew lower, almost a whisper. "And I will not exist as you see me now." The words seemed to cut through the silence, laden with a meaning the master did not yet fully understand. Yoda raised his hand, as if to hold on to that connection for a few more moments. "Wait, you must, young Skywalker. What happens now? Tell me you must." The request was not just an order, but an invitation for Luke to stay, even if by a thread, and reveal what was still hidden. The energy in the room seemed to condense, setting the stage for a revelation that would change everything. And so, as Luke's form wavered between presence and disappearance, Yoda prepared to hear something that could never be forgotten. The Force, silent but intense, seemed to hold its breath along with him, awaiting the continuation of that unlikely encounter between two Jedi separated by generations. Luke stood before Yoda, struggling to maintain his visible form. His expression was laden with an almost unbearable weight. "What I am about to tell you is what happens in my time. A time that may become inevitable if nothing changes." Yoda nodded slowly, closing his eyes for a moment to focus on the Force. Luke took a deep breath, or the equivalent of that in his spectral state, and began to narrate. "It all begins when the war is at its height. Anakin, already a Jedi Knight, becomes increasingly close to Chancellor Palpatine. What no one realizes is that Palpatine is, in fact, the Sith Lord known as Darth Sidious. He manipulates Anakin, exploiting his fears and insecurities, especially his fear of losing Padme, who in my timeline is pregnant. Yoda kept his gaze fixed, absorbing every word as if it were a piece of a dark puzzle. Luke continued, his voice firm but with a touch of sadness. Palpatine offers to teach Anakin a power that, according to him, can prevent death. He feeds the idea that only the dark side of the Force is capable of saving Padme. And Anakin, driven by fear and love, begins to give in. Yoda murmured, "Fear, gateway to the dark side, is dangerous. This is." The confirmation seemed to hurt the ghost more, for he knew that Yoda already recognized the threat. The Jedi Council begins to distrust the Chancellor and decides to act. Mace Windu and other masters try to arrest him. It is at this moment that Anakin is faced with a choice, to side with the Order or to protect Palpatine in the hope of saving Padme. Luke paused. He chooses the Chancellor. He kills a Jedi Master to save him. That is the point of no return. Yoda closed his eyes, shaking his head slightly. But destiny still change we can. Luke clenched his ethereal fist. After that, Palpatine declares him his new apprentice, Darth Vader. He is sent to the Jedi Temple, where he kills everyone, including young apprentices. The room seemed to grow cold with those words, and Yoda slowly opened his eyes, staring at the ghost with a heavy gaze. Meanwhile, Luke continued. Palpatine proclaims the Republic as the first galactic empire, promising security and stability, but it is only the beginning of a reign of terror. He hunts down all the Jedi, turns free worlds into military fortresses, and controls the Senate like a puppet. His voice was heavy with revulsion and pain, for each sentence was a memory he would rather never have had. Yoda breathed slowly, as if filtering every detail through the Force. Anakin, destroyed within, he was. But what of Padme? Luke closed his eyes for a moment before answering. She dies, shortly after giving birth, but not from illness or accident. She loses the will to live when she sees what Anakin has become. The words sounded like blades cutting through the air. Luke continued, My twin sister, Leia, and I are separated for our protection. She grows up as the daughter of Senator Bail Organa, and I am taken to Tatooine, raised far from the war. But this future is marked by pain and loss. The Order never recovers, and the galaxy lives under the rule of fear. Yoda frowned. Great the cost is, but why to me alone do you come? Because if any other master knows, decisions may be rushed, and the Force may be thrown off balance in unpredictable ways. You have the time, patience, and vision that no one else has to make the right moves. Luke approached, his figure almost disappearing. And because Anakin's fate can be altered, but only if the approach is subtle and calculated. Luke's body began to fade away at the edges. His form distorted like smoke in the wind, but his eyes remained fixed on the Master. What I am showing you is a path that can still be avoided, but the Force demands a price to change the course of the future. And that price may be high even for you. The room seemed to pulsate with the words, as if they echoed not only in the air, but in the walls and floor. Remember, Master Yoda? Luke said in a weaker voice. A single step can change all of history, but one wrong step can destroy it forever. Yoda leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrow and alert. What to do? Tell me before you go. But the light around Luke fragmented, scattering like golden dust through the air. His final words echoed, The rest you will have to discover. And then he disappeared. The Master remained alone in the room, but the weight of what he had just heard did not disappear. The Force seemed to envelop him in absolute silence, as if waiting for his decision. He knew that from that moment on, nothing could be as it had been before. Yoda left the council chamber with slow steps, the weight of Luke's revelations still echoing in his mind. The Force seemed restless, as if watching his every move. He knew that any hasty action could hasten the dark future he was trying to avoid. So he remained completely silent, not exchanging a word with the other masters. As he walked through the corridors of the Jedi Temple, He felt as if each step was being measured by the Force itself, guiding him toward decisions that would need to be made with coolness and precision. Back in his quarters, he sat on the small meditation seat, crossing his legs and closing his eyes. The image of Luke disappearing, leaving only the warning that destiny could change, repeated itself like an endless echo. Narrow path, this is, but walk, I must, he murmured, accepting that the responsibility was now his alone. There was no room to share what he knew. If the council found out, they might react hastily, and the consequences would be irreversible. After hours of silence, Yoda concluded that he needed to probe Anakin's heart. Calling him for a conversation could reveal whether the young man was already under Palpatine's influence. More than that, it would allow him to assess how far he was willing to go to protect those he loved. He rose and sent a messenger to request Anakin's presence in one of the temple's most secluded meditation rooms. He wanted an environment free of distractions, where he could observe the Jedi Knight's every reaction. Anakin arrived shortly thereafter, his steps steady but his face marked by fatigue. "Master Yoda, what do you wish to discuss?" he asked, trying to sound neutral. The master studied his expression before speaking. "Something to me, tell you have? In heart? Keep something. Do you?" Anakin's response was quick, but accompanied by a look that avoided direct contact. "No, master. Just the pressure of war and some personal concerns." The hesitation in his voice was evident. "Fear in you I see," said Yoda, in a calm but penetrating tone. "Fear a door to the dark side is, protecting to loss it may lead." Anakin frowned, taking a deep breath. "It's not that simple, master. There are people I cannot lose." It was the confession Yoda had hoped to hear, proof that attachment was already shaping the young man's decisions. "Attachments let go of you must, or by them you will be brought down," he warned, trying to plant a seed of reflection. Despite his attempt, Yoda felt that his words were not having the desired effect. Anakin seemed to listen but not absorb. Restlessness was etched in the Jedi Knight's gaze, which remained fixed on thoughts and fears he did not share. The master understood that there was no time to attempt a slow change. He needed to remove him from Palpatine immediately, before the bond between them grew even stronger. Ending the conversation, Yoda said goodbye with a brief nod, letting Anakin believe that the meeting had been just another routine briefing. However, as soon as he was alone, the master went to the council. He would not reveal the real reason, but would present a plan to transfer Anakin to a distant mission, which would serve as both a distraction and protection. At the next meeting, Yoda suggested sending Anakin to Kashyyyk, claiming that his presence as a negotiator and strategist could be decisive in keeping the planet allied with the Republic. Some masters questioned whether this was the best choice, given the timing of the war. But Yoda's authority and experience were enough to prevent further debate. The proposal was approved, and the transfer order would be issued immediately. Anakin received the news with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. "Kashyyyk? Now? Master, my duties on Coruscant are many." Yoda replied firmly, "Necessary it is. Mission important it will be. We have confidence in you." The young Jedi did not insist, but the look he gave made it clear that he suspected there was more behind that decision. For Yoda, every step was being calculated. He knew that if Luke was right, every day Anakin spent away from Palpatine would be a chance to prevent the advance of a dark future. However, he also understood that sending the young man away did not mean changing his heart. That battle would be much more difficult, and time might not be on his side. At the end of the day, Yoda watched Anakin leave with the detachment for Kashyyyk. As the ship gained altitude, the master kept his gaze fixed on the horizon, feeling the Force stir. A glimmer of hope. "This is, but faint, it still is," he said to himself, walking slowly back through the corridors of the temple. He knew that the next step would require directly confronting the one Luke had revealed as the greatest enemy. Yoda remained motionless for hours in his meditation room, weighing all the possibilities. Luke's words echoed within him like an inevitable call. He knew that if other masters went after Palpatine, the result would be disastrous. The future Luke had described would become reality. So he decided he would face the Chancellor alone. There would be no witnesses, no intervention. Just him and the Sith Lord, face to face, in a duel that would decide the fate of the galaxy. At nightfall, he left the Jedi Temple discreetly, using little-used passages and without alerting anyone to his plans. The city of Coruscant still glowed with incessant movement, but to Yoda, the environment seemed quieter than ever. Each step he took was accompanied by that dense feeling in the Force, as if the universe itself were waiting for the clash. His destiny led him to the Senate building, where Palpatine awaited. Arriving at the entrance to the Chancellor's private quarters, Yoda did not knock or announce his presence. He used the Force to open the doors, revealing Palpatine sitting with a satisfied smile on his face. "Master Yoda, you come to me alone? Brave? Or very foolish?" said Sidious, rising slowly. The Jedi Master entered unhurriedly, approaching the center of the room. "The end has come for you, Sidious. No more deceiving," he replied, his voice laden with determination. The two stared at each other for a few seconds, sizing each other up like predators before the attack. Then, the characteristic sound echoed as they both ignited their lightsabers. Yoda's green and Sidious' red cast reflections across the golden walls of the room. The first blow was quick and violent, with Palpatine trying to impose his offensive from the start. Yoda responded with precision, dodging and counterattacking with calculated movements. The combat intensified, each clash of blades producing sparks and vibrations across the floor. Sidious used acrobatic jumps and treacherous blows, trying to surprise the Jedi Master. Yoda, smaller in stature, moved with incredible agility, jumping, spinning, and positioning himself to strike from unexpected angles. The sound of metal mingled with the hum of the blades, creating a symphony of pure tension. Palpatine, realizing that he could not break his opponent's defense with his saber, suddenly backed away and raised his hands. Blue energy bolts shot from his fingers, illuminating the entire room. The attack was fierce, charged with hatred and the raw power of the dark side. Yoda stood his ground, raising his small hands and absorbing the energy with the Force. His eyes narrowed as he felt the weight of the electrical discharge pressing against him. The Jedi Master, instead of just resisting, began to channel all that energy, redirecting it back to the emitter. The light increased in intensity, and Sidious was taken by surprise. The rays ricocheted, hitting him squarely. A sharp cry cut through the air as the Sith's body was thrown against one of the room's columns. The smell of ozone and burning spread, and the walls reflected the flash of the explosion. Even wounded, Palpatine tried to get up, but Yoda was already walking toward him. Each step was accompanied by almost complete silence, interrupted only by Sidious's heavy breathing. The Jedi Master looked down, seeing not only the mortal enemy of the Order, but the source of all the corruption that threatened the galaxy. "Too dangerous to be left alive, you were, Chancellor," he declared, his voice firm and controlled. In a quick and precise movement, Yoda lit his saber again and delivered the final blow. The green blade cut through the air and ended the Sith Lord's life. Palpatine's body fell limply, and the room was plunged into heavy silence. The Jedi Master turned off his weapon, observing the result not with satisfaction, but with the awareness that he had done what was necessary. The Force felt different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from the entire universe. Balance, for now, had been restored. Yoda turned and left the hall without looking back, walking through the same doors he had opened moments before. There was no glory to be celebrated, only the certainty that a great evil had been eliminated. As he stepped out into the night of Coruscant, Yoda felt the cold breeze against his face. The future was still uncertain, but at least that day would not be remembered as the beginning of an era of tyranny. What would come next, he did not know. He only knew that the fight for the light never ended, and that vigilance must be constant. With steady steps, the Jedi Master disappeared into the darkness of the city, carrying with him the weight and responsibility of having changed the course of history. The galaxy slept unaware that, on that night, destiny had been rewritten by a single act of courage. With the news of Palpatine's sudden death, Anakin felt a strange relief mixed with fear. He still feared for the visions he had had about Padme, but little by little, he realized that the nightmares had ceased. The absence of that constant shadow in the Force allowed his heart to calm down. For the first time in a long time, he could breathe without the weight of imminent threat. Padme noticed the change in him, and it further strengthened the bond between them. With no more reason to hide their feelings, Anakin and Padme decided to go public with their relationship. Far from the pressures and intrigues of Coruscant, they went to live on Naboo, surrounded by the tranquility of the lakes and fields that Padme loved so much. There, Luke and Leia grew up in peace, far from the wars and the dark side. Family life brought balance to Anakin, and time with his wife and children made him understand the value of what he really needed to protect. Over the years, Anakin decided to return to the Jedi Order, but this time without the chains of fear and uncontrolled attachment. He had learned to channel his emotions without being overwhelmed by them. With his full power developed, he became an unmatched force among the Jedi. His unique experience and acquired wisdom led him to be named Grand Master, a position from which he was able to promote profound reforms in the Order, making it more flexible and connected to the reality of the galaxy. Under his leadership, the Jedi Order entered a new era. The teachings began to value not only detachment, but also understanding of emotions, avoiding the repression that had so often led to the downfall of great Jedi in the past. Luke and Leia grew up seeing their father and mother as examples of courage and compassion. And so, generation after generation, the Jedi prospered, maintaining peace and justice for centuries, in a future completely different from the one Luke's ghost had once feared.